Hello and welcome back. I have Carl with me here today, and we're going to make a video. Obviously. You want to show everybody your dog tags? Wow. They're so... it's too much. What are they from?
They're from Creature Commandos, which debuts on Max on December 3rd, I believe, which is the start of the new DCU by James Gunn.
We are not affiliated with them at all. This is not an ad. Carl's is very excited about it. Wow. Hello and welcome back to my channel. I've got Carl with me here today. So I talked a little bit about this on TikTok and Instagram. Carl is a big fan of DC Comics.
Yes.
About a month ago, DC launched this new initiative called All In. Okay, and the idea of this was that it's supposed to be two things. It continues the continuity of the stories, but it also gives people who maybe weren't reading DC Comics or maybe who haven't read them for a while, gives them a great jumping on point to start reading them. So I, out of the goodness of my heart, decided to start reading the All In books with Carl. And so today we're going to talk about some of them and our thoughts because the first month has just ended. I specifically am going to be talking more about if I think they're good jumping on points, but also like just as someone who is kind of coming into this a little bit more fresh, what I think. And Carl has actually been following DC Comics, so he's got a little bit different perspective on that.
That's right. And I also rated them on Goodreads.
Okay, great. We're going to jump in and we're just going to go through the first month and we'll talk about some different ones. And then, of course, make sure that you let us know if you're reading these comics, if you've thought about reading these comics, and which ones sound the most interesting to you. Or if you are reading them, which ones you've enjoyed the most so far. We would love to know. And let us know if this is something you'd like us to continue in the future. Sure. Let's jump in.
So it all began with the DC All In special, which is a flip book. And it's flip book because they started this whole concept as a continuity thing where with the regular comics, and then on the flip side, they start a whole new absolute universe, which is all tied in together in one storyline, and this book is the start.
Can you take that out of the package? Because I feel like people might not know what a flip book is. So a flip book is the concept is that this is the comic and you open it and you read it, but when you flip to the other side, there is also another comic basically that you read from that direction. So this is like two comics in one, and they all meet in the middle with the two different storylines basically converge in the middle.
That's right! And we mostly bought our comics digitally, but some we bought physically, such as this.
So as we talk about these comics, you'll probably see an image of them pop up here as we talk about them, which is what Carl will probably edit to make it look like that.
Okay.
I believe in you. You can do it. As Carl mentioned, this first All In book, kind of what it sets up is Darkseid dies, correct?
No.
Oh, something happens to Darkseid.
No, because the previous storyline, the Absolute Power storyline, something is going on, and I think he feels like something is missing in the universe.
Or someone, or
something is missing, and he decides to investigate, and I didn't really get that story. Like, it was a little confusing on what happened and how it happened, but he somehow disappears from the main continuity universe and creates a new universe based on his energy, because they've described that the main universe has Superman energy, which is hope. So all the heroes were hopeful and stuff.
Superman energy. Yeah, as Carl said, the Darkseid essentially creates a new universe. If you've read DC Comics before, you know that DC Comics exists kind of in this thing called the multiverse, and there's a whole bunch of different worlds. But at the end of Absolute Power, which is the event that led up to all of this, the multiverse basically goes away, and there's just like the core universe. Then Darkseid comes and he creates his own universe. It's basically if all of the heroes were underdogs and hope was like not a thing.
That's right, because it's all Darkseid energy.
Yeah, so it kind of creates these two universes, and you're going to see that some of the comics that have been coming out exist in that new universe, whereas all the others exist in the regular universe. And when the ones that exist in the new universe come up, we will absolutely tell you which ones.
That's right.
Spoiler alert, all of their titles start with absolute, so it should be easy to figure out which ones are which.
So I did not rate this comic on Goodreads, but I thought it was alright. Like I said, I was confused about the Darkseid part of the storyline on the flip book, and then this side, it's the Justice League kind of coming back together, because Justice League has not been around. There was no title of the Justice League for a couple years, so now it's coming back.
I thought the Justice League side of the comic was really good and interesting. I didn't love the Darkseid side of the comic because I didn't love the art, and that's not to say that I don't think the artist is good, because I've seen the artist on other projects and I've liked their artwork in other things I've seen. But I just think for this particular book, their art wasn't my favorite because I think there's a lot happening in this book that is very detailed that you kind of need to understand what's happening, and a lot of the stories being told through the art. And when you get done, it's hard to really know exactly what happened because the art doesn't visualize it very well. And I think that's a problem. Like I said, I've seen the artists do other books and their own work, and I think it's great. I just don't think they were necessarily the right artist for the dark side part of the comic. That side of the comic was a little bit of a miss for me, even though story-wise, I liked the direction they were going of like creating this new universe.
I would probably give it maybe a 3.
Yeah, I think a 3 or a 4.
And then the first book that we actually purchased and did not get digitally is Batman 153, All In, baby.
And this starts a new Batman storyline. So any of these
any
of these DC comics that are the part of this are going to say All In there. So this starts a new Batman story.
Jorge Jimenez.
What happens in this book?
It's a new storyline in which Riddler started his own company.
Oh, yeah.
It goes kind of back into his history a little bit, I think, of his origins a little. I'm trying to remember. And then, there's like a city-sponsored hero that shows up to out Batman, and he has guns. Something happens to the mayor that's bad.
This issue deals a lot with more of the like kind of underworld and political system of Gotham, but it also deals with, like Carl said, this new like city-sponsored hero shows up, and he's very different than Batman in not great ways. I expect he'll probably be the villain of this arc. I thought this was a good jumping on point. However, I do think it feels like a lot. There's a lot being introduced in the world. There's a lot of characters being introduced. There's a lot of story being introduced. And if you are completely new to Batman, you're probably not going to know who most of these characters are, with the exception of Bruce Wayne and the Riddler, because those are pretty common household names. Even if you've not read Batman before, you probably know who those people are. So there's a lot of story here. I do expect to really enjoy this because I like stories that are very in-depth with like the political systems and all of that. But I do think if this is your first foray into Batman, it's going to feel like a lot. So feel free to take your time as you delve in.
I think you'll be fine.
I don't know.
Batman. It'll be fine. You'll catch up pretty quickly.
I worry about you, so I don't know.
The stories will be fine. I honestly don't remember it now. So that means I didn't rate this one, so I'm going to rate it now and give it probably like a 3.5 to 4. 3.5.
Okay, so the next one we're going to talk about, and this should hopefully pop up here with Magic Carl's editing, is Poison Ivy. And this starts with
your mama.
Poison Ivy number 26. Poison Ivy is trying to live her life. She's sort of just discovered that there's this like weird city that's been revealed that I think was underwater. But there's also this other like an activist group, and they're doing some bad things, and they're basically blaming Poison Ivy and saying that she's leading them.
Trying to frame her.
And she's like, this is weird because I don't know who you are.
Yeah, she's in the city and she's not with Harley. Which I was surprised. She's with somebody else.
She's got herself a new lady.
Yeah, and I guess she's investigating this new city that she excavated. I think she found it, right?
Yeah, I mean, she's off having like a little Indiana Jones adventure, like a Tomb Raider moment. And meanwhile in the city, there are people like blaming her for their...
And she's also like heavily part of the Green now.
Yeah, I know we had different opinions of this. I really liked this. I thought it was very interesting, and I liked seeing Poison Ivy kind of go off on her own. I liked especially her story about the mystery of this uncovered city that basically like came out of the swamp. I think all that was really cool, so I'm excited to see like why that's happening.
If you're a fan of Poison Ivy or environmentalism or whatever you call that, environmental
You're a fan
rights,
of environmentalism. Have I got the comic for you?
You know, this series has been going on for 26 issues, and I always thought, who reads these? I heard it was kind of good, and I never went back to read them, and so I thought this is a great point for me to jump on. And I enjoyed it, but not enough to want to purchase it, the next issue myself.
To be fair, Carl doesn't purchase any of these issues, with the exception of the first two we showed.
What I meant is I wouldn't purchase.
Okay, fair enough.
Because if I give it a 2-star, that means it's good, but not like...
Give it a 2-star?
I'm gonna give it
I would
money
never...
good.
If I gave something a 2-star, I hate it.
Oh!
Hate the 2-star, I mean...
1-star
2-star to me is like, I really disliked it, and 1-star to me is like, unreadable.
Well, 2
so for you to be like, if I give it a 2,
okay.
it's good.
2 is okay. 3 is good, and I'm on the borderline of whether or not I would buy it. It'd be issue by issue, and I'd probably look through it and decide whether or not I want to buy it. 4 means, yes, I'll probably follow and still buy it, and 5 means...
Yeah, okay. Sure. 2 is pretty bad.
So it's got like a 2.5 then, okay?
Okay. So next up, now this is a series that's interesting because of all of these, I think this is the only one that we've gotten to read multiple issues of in the first month because it is coming out weekly. This is Action Comics, and it starts with issue 1070. And this is a Superman story, so if you're not familiar, Action Comics is going to be Superman focused, and... Excuse me?
Excuse you.
Excuse me. And so this series has been coming out every week. Essentially, this sort of starts with Superman needing to go into the Phantom Zone to, like, figure out some things are happening in the Phantom Zone, and they shouldn't be, and he gets there, and, like, there's a lot happening in the Phantom Zone. There's, like, whole cultures have risen up. They're, like, flying around in, like, sky
People
boats.
are supposed to be phantoms in there, you know, and frozen in stasis.
Yeah, they're
not. For some reason, they become physical, and so he's investigating that. Like, what is going on?
They're, like, living their best pirate life in here. I have been really enjoying this series, and coming up to the most recent issue, I just read this week's issue, so I'm not going to get into that too much, but at the very end, he ends up flashing sort of to a different part in time in his history. I really liked it. I think that this book has an unfair advantage because unlike a lot of the books we're going to talk about today, we've only gotten to read one issue. With this, we've gotten to read 4, now 5, because I've read the next one. And so we are much deeper into the story. I'll tell you what I like about it is it feels very classic Superman. Like when I think about what I would think a Superman book would be, this is what it feels like to me.
So, like the writer Mark Waid is also writing World's Finest that was recommended to you, and I know you read a little bit of it. Right?
I have not yet.
You haven't?
Not
well,
yet.
People like it because it feels very classic comic booky stories, and they're fun. And the interesting about this book is that they kind of like have little storylines, like backup stories going on.
Yeah, they also have, because there are like other Supermans.
Right?
There's Superman's son, and then there's the Chinese Superman.
Yeah, and there's Superboy.
And there's Superboy, and we're kind of also seeing some things that they're doing at the same time, which is interesting. So that's kind of fun. I think when people think about DC Comics, a lot of people are like big Batman fans, but I don't know if people, even myself included, I used to say, well, I don't really like Superman because he's sort of flawless, and I don't find that very interesting. But we've recently been watching My Adventures with Superman, the TV show, and reading this, and I feel like I'm becoming a Superman fan. I'm starting to really enjoy him as a character. I've really enjoyed Action Comics. The only thing I haven't really enjoyed is at the end of each issue, there's a small, like, side story that's about Supergirl. I like the art, but I think the story is, like, not great.
I found it hard to follow, and I'm not really sure where it's going and how it connects to anything.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time caring about it. You know when you read something and it is making progress, but at the same time it feels like it's going nowhere? That's what that story feels like to me. Like, they are moving along, but at the same time, every time I read it, I'm like, oh, nothing happened here. Why is this here?
Yeah. And you know, they didn't even bother really introduce all the super characters, so that wasn't confusing to you at all?
No, that's fine. I just know
That's good then.
They're all super. They're all hanging out. They're all super.
So I gave this a 3, which means I would probably still buy it.
Okay.
To continue.
All right. Next up is Birds of Prey number 14. We see a new team of Birds of Prey, and one of them, who I think is Cassandra Cain, is basically on a covert operating mission breaking into a facility, I believe, to free some people.
How do you remember these things?
Helps that I just read issue 2 today. That helped bring me some memories. And we're also seeing just the dynamic of the Birds of Prey as a team back at their base and how they all get along. I like this! I mean, I'm a big fan of found family stories, and this definitely feels like a found family story, especially since I've read issue 2. It's really fun to see these characters interact. I really like Barda. I don't know much about her, but I already love her. I love her. I don't know anything about her, but I love her. And it's really great to see just a team of women, of like these strong female characters, and seeing them interact. This book is just so female focused and so woman focused, and it's just about them and their relationships with each other and their different strengths and weaknesses. And it's honestly very refreshing because a lot of these books are very, very man heavy. And this book is like all about these ladies, and they're all awesome, and they're all very deep, interesting characters.
Nice.
And I'm enjoying it a lot.
It's written by Kelly Thompson and drawn by Sami Basri. Oh my goodness. The art is really good.
Yeah, the art is really good.
And I did watch an interview with the writer, and they said their focus is always on character before plot.
Oh, for sure.
And so I'm like, that's cool. And this is also the writer of the upcoming Absolute Wonder Woman.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
FYI.
I just love this a lot. I like the art, I like the characters. Nothing really happens in issue 1, and I still really liked it because I just really liked getting to know all these characters.
I actually read the first issue originally, and also because one of the birds in the storyline was Zealot from Wildstorm Wildcats, and she's not in it anymore. What happened?
I don't know.
What happened to her?
I don't know. To
Give
me,
it a 3.
This book also gives me like Teen Titan vibes. Like, if you like stuff like Teen Titans, I think you'll like this a lot.
Give it a 3. That means maybe I'll get the next issue.
Well, you definitely got the next issue because I bought it already. Next up, we're going to talk about this one really quick. This is Shazam.
Issue 16.
This was, I think, for both of us, the first book. Well, at least definitely for me, I said this is the first book in the All-In line that I will not be continuing to read.
Written by Josie Campbell. If this is the same Josie Campbell, she is also the one who produced My Adventures with Superman.
Really?
Apparently.
That's crazy because My Adventures with Superman is so good, and I thought this comic was so bad.
Did you find it very hard to follow?
I found it very hard to follow. I found the art to be just an absolute mess. I thought the art was all over the place, and I felt it was very inconsistent. I thought some frames were really well done. I felt some frames looked like they were a first draft that never got edited. I felt like I didn't have any connection to the story or the characters. The attempts at humor felt so contrived and so bad Saturday morning cartoon that is eye roll. Nothing about this book made me want to continue reading it. And I mean, I didn't even want to finish reading this single issue, and it's only 20 something pages.
I thought the art was fine, but yeah, the story to me, it just didn't grab me. It didn't have the same feeling of when it first started. This isn't, the first Shazam book, but when it restarted, I kind of liked that better, so I'm not so sure about this jumping on point. And I gave it a 2.
It feels like it was written for a younger middle grade audience, and I think maybe if you're that younger middle grade audience, you will like it, but as an adult, I found it insufferable.
Oh.
I really did not like it.
Sad. Too bad we weren't the editor.
Nah, well, that's fine. Next up, we have Batman and Robin. This begins with Batman and Robin number 14. I don't remember. I mean, I know that Batman and Robin are going to a party, and then something happens, and so he leaves Robin. In this story, Robin is Damian, his son. Bruce has to go out and take care of some bad guys, and he leaves Damian to protect the people at the party. I will say, I don't know that there was enough in this issue for me to judge this book yet. I have to read more because I feel like there was a lot of setup. Not enough happened for me to be able to say I think this is an interesting story. And maybe that's a problem, that it's the first issue and there's not enough happening to make me be I can't wait to read the next one. It was more I need to see more. But I will say I loved the art. I liked the artwork a lot.
Typically, I feel like the best interactions when they have Batman and Damian Robin are always, this dynamic of father and son as Batman and Robin. That's always been, I think, successful in previous runs where they had Batman, Robin, Damian, and they do a little bit of that here, so that's great, but I too was not completely hooked yet. However, I really like this writer typically, Philip Kennedy Johnson. He did Action Comics prior to the new one that just came out, and I thought it was really good. So, I mean, it's Batman, so I plan on probably checking it out some more, so I give it 3.
I need a little more, but I will say, and I said this already, but I'll say it again, I loved the artwork in this book. It was very stylized, and I thought it was just a lot of fun and really well done. Yeah, Batman and Robin. Next up, we read the Green Lantern Civil Core War, which is a single issue, and then we went on to read the following Green Lantern after that. Carl and I have very different opinions of this, I think, because Carl actually was reading Green Lantern, so he came into the story knowing what was going on. I came into the story not really having any idea of what was happening in the story before it, and I think that's why I didn't like it. It was not a good jumping on point. When I came into it, it distinctly felt like if I decided to start watching Star Wars for the first time and started with episode 9, I would have no idea what was going on. It would just be a lot of explosions and craziness, and I just did not think it was a good place for anyone new to Green Lantern to jump in, or even if you've read Green Lantern in the past and are jumping back in. I think it was just a lot of explosions and action and very little context as to why I should care about any of it. I was not a fan.
I think it's a little difficult. The regular story in Green Lantern is issue 16. And I read it from issue 1, and I loved it. I loved where it was going. There's a lot of new things that are happening. And so jumping in here, so much is going on, and it's not immediately familiar to those who might have read Green Lantern in the past, let alone have never. So it's very difficult because there's a lot going on, and they kind of mention things really quick, and for me, who already knew those things, were oh look, but they mentioned that and mentioned that and mentioned that, but for anyone else, they might have really missed that and not make those connections and not know what they would mean anyway.
Yeah.
But for me, since I read issue 1 through 15 prior, I really liked it because I liked where the story was going in the first place prior to that. I think it's unfortunate since they planned this 3 years ago that they couldn't have somehow made it so that this first All-In issue would be more like the first issue of the actual book, which makes more sense to me. Like, if you were to read it, you should read the first issue from there. Yeah. I gave it a 4, having read it already.
I would have given it a 1. I hated it. I hated it so much.
So good.
I just thought it was, like, not it.
So good.
And that brings us to our first Absolute book. So this was Absolute Batman number 1. So again, this takes place in a different universe, and we're seeing a new version of Batman where basically his dad was a teacher. He doesn't have this big amount of money. It's like DIY Batman. He's doing it all on his own.
Working class.
Yeah, he's working class, and he like basically like he goes to the gym and is just bulking up, and then he goes and hangs out with his friends after work, and he has decided to start like fighting back for the sake of his city.
There's something else happening in his past, I think, that causes him to become...
Yeah, I mean, he still loses his dad.
And also, I think there was like a shooting or something.
That's how he lost his dad.
Is it a school shooting?
It was at a zoo. With his class. I absolutely adored this. I thought it was so good. I thought it was such an interesting take on Batman. I thought the art was phenomenal. I thought the way that different characters in the Batman universe are reutilized in this new universe is fantastic.
Yeah, I think like some of his traditional rogues are like his friends.
Yeah. Some of in the past that have been Batman villains are like his group of buddies that he goes out with after work.
Yeah.
Every page of this was phenomenal. I mean, I finished this and I wanted to reread it. Like, that's how much I loved it. I just thought it was so good.
There was a lot of hype coming up on this, and so I was not as impressed because I think I had too much hype coming into it. It was still good, and I went out to buy it physically and got the Jim Lee cover. And also, every week during the month, if you went and you bought 4 DC new comics, you would also get a Justice League membership card.
Yeah, and because this is the first issue of this is an excellent place to jump in, because there's nothing really that you need to know going into this to enjoy it.
That's right. Different card each week.
I would even go as far to say that this was my favorite of the first month of All In. Like, I really, really, really adored this. I thought it was just so good and so well done.
I'm so curious if I
Can't
wait.
wait.
I'm wondering if I gave a 5 to anyone, but this is a 4. I gave this a 4, so it's pretty solid.
There would be likely 3 that I would give 5s to, and this is one of them. So I loved this, and I highly recommend it, and I can't wait for issue 2.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to what happens.
Next up is Wonder Woman. Now, this is another one that's interesting because Carl had read up to this point, Wonder Woman 14, and I was jumping into Wonder Woman here, and this is another one that I would have given a 5. I thought it was so beautifully written. It deals with Wonder Woman Diana.
Oh, yep.
She is dealing with the death of Steve Trevor. It really follows her process through grief at losing him, and this issue made me cry. I thought it was just really absolutely stunningly beautiful. I loved it.
I cannot say enough good things about the whole run of Wonder Woman up to 14, with exception of the 2 tie-in issues to Absolute Power. I would just skip over those last 2. So 12 and 13, I would skip over if I could. I would read issues 1 through 11 and then read 14. A beautiful story. Yeah. Excellent art. This is my favorite DC book, hands down. When it first came out for Dawn of DC, I was like, wow, this is the book. It's written by Tom King. It is so good. I highly recommend Jason go back and read from issue 1.
Yeah, and I might at some point.
And it's crazy because, like, you're still jumping in the middle. And I'm like, I can't believe you're jumping in the middle of what happened in this whole storyline. And I was like, are you not confused? But it's because they did so much good character work that even the questions that were left unanswered, I think he kind of just let that go.
Yeah, because it's not really the focus. I think the best superhero stories are the things that are really special about them to me are never going to be the action or the fighting or the big plot. It's always going to be the moments where these bigger than life heroes feel human.
Yeah.
And her dealing with grief and loss feels so human and so relatable that nothing else really matters to me. Like, this was just absolutely stunning.
This is the crown jewel of Dawn of DC, and I think of this month for me. It's a 5-star. I've seen that.
Yeah,
this is the one
really
that I
good.
gave a 5-star.
Really good.
5 stars. Go back and read from issue 1.
Jumping to our next book, we're going to talk about Titans.
16.
Titans number 16. Titans have decided to elect a new leader, and as soon as they do, they find out that someone is messing with their brains. I'm interested to see more, but I was greatly disappointed with this book as someone who was pretty excited to, like, I've watched Teen Titans before. I like Nightwing as a character. I was like, oh, Titans! I said this in my review on TikTok when I made my short about it. I said that most of this book felt like I was watching a meeting that could have been an email.
I liked it more than that.
I think it's all right. I think it has an interesting setup. I think probably the next issue will be more interesting.
Yeah.
But I feel like, unlike Birds of Prey, it introduced me to the team but didn't really get me to know any of them super well. They we see them in the opening and they're fighting something, and then they end up all around a conference table talking about who should be the leader, and there wasn't like a lot of really good character work. It really was just I felt like, okay, these are the things I need to do to set up the plot that I'm trying to do. Okay, yeah, check, and not a lot of like depth.
All these weird like flashback hallucinations.
Hallucinating.
And like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And what does it mean? And it's written by John Layman, which is a favorite of yours.
I do really like John Layman. I really loved the book Chew.
I'll also say, prior to this, I also read, not all the issues, but some of them, because it was written by Tom Taylor.
Yeah.
And I'm a big Tom Taylor fan. His Nightwing is amazing. And so I read a little bit of that for that, and now he's gone. And
yeah, I was not impressed, but I am willing to give it another chance.
I give it a 3.
Yeah, I would give it a 3.
That means it's okay. I'll check out maybe.
Yeah, it was all right. Next up, we have Catwoman
69.
Oh, all right. I thought this was all right. I mean, basically, we see
Selena Kyle.
So she finds out that one of her previous aliases has died. There's like a news article that her previous alias has died, and she's like, "Well, that's weird because that's me, and I'm still alive."
She's like,
So she goes off to another country. I can't remember now which country. Is it Germany?
I can't remember, but she's definitely like on the run now.
Yeah, she's like on the run. She kind of like drops everything she's got to go on the run to try and like solve this mystery. I thought this was fine. I just don't know. Again, I don't know that it gave me enough to be able to say like, this is a good story, because a lot of it was set up. Yeah. But I liked the art a lot. The art was super stylish.
Yeah, and, I thought it was all right. The art was good, and I thought the story was okay. But for someone to jump on and be like, this is my book, I like this, I think there's something a little bit missing.
It wasn't particularly an exciting issue. It had a lot of setup that I was like, all right, I'm interested to see what we do next with this. But there was nothing in this issue that I was like, oh, this is cool. This is exciting.
I mean, I think that if you like the idea of a female character in a dark, noir-y Gotham.
Oh, yeah. It does have like a crime noir kind of feel to it.
So that's where it kind of sticks to, because she's a thief, and, she's like a femme fatale, and she's in the shadows, and, she's like a super spy
I should say she leaves Gotham.
Yeah, but she's like a super spy, and so she's getting off the radar,
Yeah.
And so that kind of aspect, if you like that kind of stuff, that would kind of draw you in a little bit, and so I gave it a 3. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I'm definitely willing to read another issue and see what happens next. I wish it'd been a little more interesting. But. All right, next up we have our second absolute book of the month. This is Absolute Wonder Woman, number 1. And, you have this as well. This would probably be I don't think any other books are going to come in onto this list, so I'm just going to say this is my third 5-star, and I loved this. This is like a dark, gritty version of a Wonder Woman world. It still deals with like gods and things like that, but the world, it kind of has like a 300 vibe. And I say that as someone who doesn't really love that movie, but it kind of has that feel of like that dark, gritty, like Greek.
Can we do spoilers?
Dark world. I don't know if we want to do too many spoilers. I think we can give like general premise.
Yeah, I mean, you'll find out right away when you first start reading it, like what makes her different from the traditional continuity Wonder Woman.
Who her father is, right?
That and who her adopted mother is, and just the history of, where are the Amazons? What happened to that? Like, all of that.
So that's kind of the concept of this. So if you remember, we talked about Batman as kind of the idea of if he didn't have his wealth. All the Absolute books to me so far feel very much like, what if you took this character and took away their classic support system? Like, you took away the thing that kind of made them who they are, right? And with Batman, you take away like all the money and all of this power, and with Wonder Woman, you're taking away the Amazons, and you're taking away kind of that support system and her upbringing, right?
But then, what makes them still Wonder Woman and Superman and Batman? I think that's what the key is and what they're focusing on, but then putting them in completely different circumstances. I love the whole fantastical, dark fantasy element of it. I want to know more.
It's what this book is like. It's like Disney's Hercules. If Disney's Hercules was like a dark 80s fantasy movie, that is the best way I can describe it.
Oh, and she has this awesome Buster sword. Is that what they're called?
Yeah. She's got, like, if Hercules and like the Dark Crystal had a baby, it would be this book. And I really loved it for that. Like, I think the monsters were cool, fights were cool, but it was also like the way that they show her upbringing and seeing her from a child to becoming this person was really cool. Art was great. I loved it.
I give it a 4.
Yeah, I give it a 5.
That means I'll probably it means definitely buying the next issue.
Yeah. All right, next up, we've got Superman. This is issue number
19.
Issue number 19 of Superman. I thought this was bad.
Oh!
I don't know if bad's the right word. I don't think it was like Shazam level of bad, but I also really didn't enjoy it. I don't think it was a great jumping on point. I think the Action Comics Superman is way more interesting. They're kind of dealing with this idea. I remember exactly why I didn't like it, which is that they're dealing with Lois Lane has become Superwoman, and they're doing some fun things with that. They're doing some interesting storytelling of like, she doesn't really know how her powers work because she just got these powers through what happened in like Absolute Power.
Right.
And so she's exploring like how strong she is and what she can do. Here's my beef. Lois Lane does not need powers to be a superhero. I think Lois Lane is such a strong, incredible female character. I don't need or want her to have superpowers because I think it kind of undercuts everything that she is.
I also think that they've done this before. I think she's been Superwoman before, so this is her return. I just don't find it a very inspired choice.
Giving her superpowers is the least interesting thing that you could do with a character like Lois Lane. Because Lois Lane is such a strong character in her own right without any powers whatsoever. She's so powerful. She's so inspiring. She's so smart. She's so interesting. And for you to say, I don't need any of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make her be able to punch stuff. It's like,
well, I mean, they can explore the relationship now with her being a hero too, and also with her mind where she would go and think that maybe Clark wouldn't, but he's a reporter too, so...
Yeah, exactly. It's lazy storytelling.
Oh, no!
It's so uninteresting. It's so uninspired.
Well, hopefully they'll
boring.
bring something new, because I also was not looking forward to her being Superwoman and not impressed by it. I didn't like that idea either, so hopefully they bring something to it.
Art was good, though.
For some reason, I gave it a 4.
Yeah, I would have given this a 2. However, I will be reading the next issue, because I do want to give it one more chance.
Why did I give it a 4?
I don't know. You were, like, really into it. I thought the art was great. Oh, they had this like reveal of this villain at the end. And you liked that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You liked the villain reveal.
I like that little cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And also, I've been reading the series prior, so I read issue 1 through 18.
So even though I didn't love this, I am willing to give it another chance. So that should say something at least.
So I give it a 4. So
next up we have, and I'm going to be honest, I really don't remember anything that happened in this, so I'm going to take a quick
Detective. Oh, we actually bought this because Jason told me how good it was. We actually bought the first issue. It's issue 1090. Detective Comics, you said?
Detective Comics 1090.
1090. And it's written by one of our favorite writers, Tom Taylor. Ooh. And Mikhail Janin is the artist. He's a superstar artist. It's like such a great creative team on a book that I thought that this would definitely be a home run. And I think I was right because Jason really liked it.
I don't remember a thing. I don't remember a thing that happened in this book.
He said he really liked it.
I'm going to have to reread this.
You liked it so much, I bought it before I even read it. Who dat?
Oh, they're trying to convince Bruce Wayne to take this drug that can enhance him and make him more powerful. And I think he's considering it, even though he normally wouldn't, because, he's dealing with all these superhuman people and he's getting older and he's getting more beat up. And now that there's this possibility that he could take something that could help him, basically like a stimulant, he's like, well, maybe.
Like live a little longer and stuff like that, because so that he can protect his family. But no, there's this other secondary story that's more interesting. I think there was this whole storyline where Batman had to determine whether or not how to handle a particular person.
Yeah,
there's this whole backstory about like how his father had taught him that it was worth saving anyone, even a bad guy. You should, even a bad guy deserves a chance to live. And so his father, this is spoiler territory, but something happened to his father. He saved someone that others thought he shouldn't have saved.
Yeah, it's all coming back. I think part of what I loved about this too is I'm currently reading the manga series Monster, which is basically that story. So it's about a doctor who saves a child, and that child grows up to be a serial killer.
Okay.
And then he feels personally responsible for that happening. That is another reason I remember liking this, is because it was so similar to that manga that I'm reading that I think is is really good, and I think the concept is really cool.
Yeah. That backstory is why I think this was really good, and then the reveal at the end, if you remember.
The reveal was good. Yeah, it's all coming back. When we flipped through it, I was like, oh, here we are. I understand.
Yeah, so...
That's rare that I forget things like that. I usually have a great memory, and Carl's usually the one that's like, what happened in this?
Like, did I give this a 5? It'd probably be a 4, if not a 5. I give it a 5!
Give it a 5. Wow. The fact that I didn't remember it makes me think it probably wouldn't be a 5 for me.
For the first month, Detective Comics All In and Wonder Woman All In are...
There you go.
Number 5.
All right, next up is Harley Quinn.
44?
Harley Quinn 44. Now, I do want to say, I have read, but this was several years ago, I've read a little bit of Harley Quinn, and I always thought it was a pretty terrible book. I thought the humor was bad. I thought the art was bad. I was not looking forward to reading this, but I had committed to reading at least one issue of everything that came out of All In, and I was pleasantly surprised. I thought it was kind of fun. It deals with Harley Quinn basically moving into her old neighborhood, which has now been gentrified, and she is going to basically de-gentrify it and, like, bring back the olden days of her neighborhood.
Gritty, crappy,
make it gritty again. And I thought that was really fun. And I actually thought the humor was good. And I thought the art was very fun. The art is not the same as the Harley Quinn animated TV show, but it has like that cartoon feel to it. I think because I went into this book expecting it to be one of my least favorite, and I expected to not want to read it after the first issue, I think because I went in with such low expectations, it ended up like pleasantly surprising me. I thought this was a lot of fun.
Interesting. He told me that before I read it. I thought it was okay.
Yeah.
No, I thought it was okay.
It's not brilliant, but it's fun.
I gave it a 3, which means I'm willing to take a look at the next issue, possibly.
Yeah, I just thought it ended up being a lot more fun than I expected it to be. Harley Quinn is not... I know a lot of people love Harley Quinn, but she's not like a character that I like. I'm like, oh my god, I love Harley Quinn. I mean, I enjoy her sometimes, and I enjoy some of the things she's in, and I definitely don't hate Harley Quinn as a character, but she's just not a character that I look for in things. But this, like, I thought this was a very fun story, and I think just the concept of it, of like, I'm gonna go in and make my old neighborhood worse again, I think was great.
And she starts her own, like, company in this, or
something. She starts her own destructive agency instead of a detective agency, which I think is... I think it's so fun. It's so silly. I liked it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, next up, we have Power Girl 14. I also thought this was bad.
Oh, man. I read it from number 1, and it was, like, part of Dawn of DC, and so they were recreating her in a way.
Yeah.
They didn't keep, like, the old Power Girl. They even changed her name. So they kind of like brought her into the new era or whatever, and I don't think it worked. Yeah. I like the old Power Girl better, and I just don't understand why this is a title and who it's supposed to be for.
Yeah, I have 2 pretty big issues with this one. One is, again, I think, much like what I said with Shazam, and this one even more so, I think the art is so inconsistent. I think sometimes the art looks great. I think sometimes the art looks terrible. It's a very mixed bag. So there's that. But the other thing is, I think this book has an identity crisis. I just don't think it knows what it wants to be. It feels like it's written for like teenage girls or young women, but it also feels distinctly like it's trying so hard to be that it's failing. You know what I mean? Like, as someone who reads a lot of young adult literature that is for that audience, this felt so forced to me and so like, this is who it's for. Do you like it? Do you like it? I made it for you. Do you like it?
I almost felt like they should have just went all in on that concept and maybe even changed the format and not make it like a traditional comic and maybe make it like it was a manga or something like that. Because that's what it does feel like. It feels a little bit more...
a slice of life.
A little bit, but I mean, there's still action and stuff like that, but I don't know that anyone really cares. There's other characters and it seems like they have a nice... a relationship, you know, because they have Natasha, who's Steel, and they also have Omen, who used to be in Titans, and it's like they're all girlfriends, but
it feels like
I don't know, we care.
Yeah, it did not give me a reason to care. It kind of feels like an early 2000s or like 90, I think more early 2000s, like cringy Disney show. Like, it just is like, there were so many moments where I was like, ugh. And it also definitely feels like an adult trying to write characters that are like young and hip. You just feel it through the page. Like, it can feel it. I'm just like, ugh. I want to say I don't know who it's for, and the sad thing is it very much thinks it knows who it's for, and it is very much not doing a great job of being for that audience, because it just was not. And I want to like it. Girl power. I'm here for it, but I just didn't think this was it. I think this missed the mark.
She has an identity crisis for sure. I gave it a 2.
Yeah, I won't be continuing this one. Maybe if they switch up the creative team, we'll try again.
Yeah,
but this was not one that made me want to come back to it at all, unfortunately. Sorry. We're almost almost through the first month. So we have Green Arrow.
17.
Okay, so we will be continuing to read Green Arrow. I think the trouble with this issue is that Green Arrow was very important to the Absolute Power storyline, which is what led up to all of this. And this book was basically used to tie up a lot of the loose ends. And because of that, it doesn't necessarily feel like the start of something new. It feels like the end of everything else. And I didn't hate it, but it also didn't really get me excited because it didn't really show me anything of what to expect next.
Yeah. This is another title that I read from the beginning from the Dawn of DC with issue 1. And I thought it was a decent book. I felt like, oh, Jason would probably like this because we've liked previous Green Arrow storylines. And so it was really, really interesting. And it has the whole Green Arrow family, which is super huge. And I thought it was actually quite decent until Absolute Power. And so I don't think this was a great jumping on point. I gave it a 2. However, I did like the previous stuff before Absolute Power. It's the same writer, so maybe it'll get better. This is like the start. So hopefully maybe by next issue, maybe we'll try that and see how it goes.
All right, next up we have Nightwing, issue number 119. I think this one's hard because I know that the old Nightwing before this was a series that people really, really loved. I didn't think this was bad. I also don't know if it was particularly special in any way. It kind of just felt like a run-of-the-mill superhero comic. I feel like he has to start working with some crime families. Is that correct? He has to start working with some of the underworld to like protect Bloodhaven.
I remember they were like he and his sister somehow framed for something. Wow, I barely remember too. Lasers. Who's that? I don't remember. Olivia Pierce. Who's that? What just blew up? That might have been important.
Oh, so they killed all those guys.
Who's she?
Makes weapons. Ew. So in this issue, basically all of these crime family bosses get blown up. And so Nightwing goes to those gangs and is like, I'm going to help you figure out who's doing this, but I need you to like not be a problem while I do it. Like, I'm going to help you, but I need you to not be my worst problem while I do it. And so then he kind of starts off his mission to like figure out like who is trying to basically become like the new head of crime in Bloodhaven. And that kind of starts him off on this mystery of like trying to figure out like who done it, because there's this woman who has basically started building weapons in Bloodhaven, I think, and she is being controlled by someone dark and mysterious. I will say, and I think this is worth noting, I'm sure we'll cut this out of the video, but we just went through and had to like reread the entire thing because we completely forgot what happened in it. And I think that says something, right? I think it says something that we didn't remember any of this. So when a book is that not memorable to both of us, not a great sign, right?
Yeah, this is very, very unfortunate. I didn't even rate it on here. I remember I forgot or something, but I did read it. The very, very sad part of this is that prior to this new All In was Tom Taylor's run of Nightwing, which was like award-winning, like so good, so good that I highly recommend going back to read. But then it's like it goes into this, and
yeah. And now that I recall what happened, I don't think it's a bad issue, but it also is like nothing stands out, nothing is super exciting, nothing is like, oh my gosh, can't wait to read more. You know what I mean? We will read the next issue, we'll see what happens next, and we'll try to continue going with it. It's not bad. It's just not great either. It's very run-of-the-mill.
Probably would have given it a 2.5, maybe a 3. So I just don't remember it.
Yeah, but I think it says a lot that I have a pretty good memory. Carl doesn't have the best memory, but the fact that neither of us remembered what happened in this, and this book only came out like a week and like maybe 2 weeks ago. And so the fact that we were both like, I have no idea what happened in this, not a great sign, because it means, you know, we talked about Absolute Batman, and that was one of the first books that came out, and I can tell you almost every single thing that happened in that book. So the fact that this only came out a couple weeks ago, and I had to be like, what even happened? Not the best. Not the best.
Not the best for a jumping on issue.
Yeah. Next up, we have The Flash.
14.
The Flash number 14. Now, Carl read through The Flash up to this point. I jumped on here. I thought this was a fun jumping on point. The Flash and his family go on like a vacation, like a field trip, basically, to like, where did they go?
They went to, not Savage Land, but the DC version of it.
Jurassic Park. They went to like a dinosaur land.
Oh, I can't remember what it's called.
Anyway, they went to Jurassic Park and with their family, and it kind of reads like The Incredibles, like going on like a family vacation. And then as the story goes on, there is a bit of a plot twist that happens towards the end of the book that kind of sets up where the story is going to go going forward. I thought this was so fun, and I think his family's really interesting, and I think it has like a really great family dynamic. It reminds me, back in the day, many, many years ago, I used to read Fantastic Four, and this really reminded me of that, like a family going on adventures creatures that are very science themed. And so I just thought this was great. This was such a fun little book.
Yeah, so of all the all-in comics that I recommend going back to read, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, I think this is the third one, which is The Flash by Cy Spurrier. A lot of people were a little bit like not sure when he jumped on because he was going for a darker story and it was very cosmic Cthulhu kind of storyline, and I read it and it's so good. It made me an instant fan of the writer. The fact that he loved this jumping on point on 14 and didn't read 1 through 13, I highly recommend that too. It's just so good. So I am on board.
It's a silly, goofy, fun time.
Yeah, and I gave this a 4.
Yeah, this was good. All right, this was a one-shot. So this was Poison Ivy, Swamp Thing,
Feral Trees, number 1.
Yeah, it's just a one-shot. I don't think there's going to be any more of this.
Yeah, it's a one-shot too.
And it deals with Poison Ivy going out into the woods with Swamp Thing, and they hear a voice, and they're going to go try and help somebody who's like trapped in the woods, and
people or kids or somebody have been captured and killed or something like that.
By the trees, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. So they're like doing a trek through the woods and kind of contemplating life. I thought this was good. I liked the art. I thought it was gorgeously drawn and painted, and I think the story was like a really nice one-shot story. And I think the exploration of what makes you human versus what makes you like a wild creature was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, they did a really good comparison of what makes Swamp Thing different from Poison Ivy. It's because she has a human side to her, and she's not just the Green who worries about and cares about the planet. As much as she cares about the planet and will do anything for the planet, she still cares about being human.
Yeah.
I like that exploration. It's written by the same person who does her regular title, Poison Ivy, and my question is, why are we having this special? Why isn't this just part of the Poison Ivy book? Who are they looking to jump on a single special issue that has both her and Swamp Thing? I just don't understand. Were they just putting it the all-in title on there just to get an extra $1 because people will be, oh, it's all in, let's get it. But really, it's just an extra story she had that didn't need to be there. It's not going to continue anywhere else. Need to be in, but I mean, it's not bad, but I'm just saying, like, money, people need to be
I'm saying I think it's a one-shot, but maybe it isn't. Maybe there's more.
Maybe it comes back later. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they have a plan, and that's why it's a special, a one-shot special that ties in Swamp Thing with her. Maybe there's something else that happens, but I wish they kind of led in or kind of made you understand whether or not that was the case, because otherwise you might not buy it.
It also doesn't say one shot on it.
Without saying all in, you might not buy it. And a lot of times they don't always say one shot anymore. A lot of times it's a single issue and they'll say number 1, like this Free Comic Book Day. This comic, it said number 1 on it. It said Absolute Power Free Comic Book Day number 1. So I'm not sure why, and I just feel like I don't know that I would have bought it if it didn't say all in.
Yeah, but I'm glad we read it because I did like it quite a bit.
I gave it a 4.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying...
You're so mad about it.
I'm just saying.
I thought it was great. It was like a really lovely little story, like a little singular story.
Should have just been part of Poison Ivy. Is what I'm saying.
Maybe. I don't know. But I liked it anyway. That's everything. That's the first month. Yeah.
No.
Everything after that is other months.
What about?
We already talked about Action Comics. We talked about Action Comics as one whole thing.
Oh, no.
We're done.
Wow.
That's everything from the first month. We literally went through every single book. As we talked about, some of them are great jumping on points. Some of them are not so great jumping on points. Some of the books are incredible. Some of the books are not so incredible. I'm curious to know if you're reading these. I've never really made comic book content on this channel at all. So I'm curious if any of you will watch this and if any of you are interested in seeing more of this as we continue into month 2. Yes. I would love, please let me know if this is something you enjoy, if you're reading these, if you're interested in more of this type of content. We've also been reading a lot of manga, so if you're interested in hearing about the manga we've read, let me know. Maybe we can do like a manga video. But this has been a lot of fun to read these and talk about them together, and it's been a lot of fun to just explore it week to week, and I'm really loving the Absolute books. I'm excited about a lot of these stories continuing forward and seeing what's happening. I mean, Action Comics alone, every week I'm excited to read that.
I want to honestly talk more about some of these comics, but you know.
But we had a lot to talk about. We're already at an hour, so yeah. Right. Carl has to edit the video, so he's like, maybe I shouldn't talk so much.
But I really want to know if you want to hear more about it. I want to tell you about, like, you know, the ones that I actually want to continue reading. The 4 stars and 5 stars are definitely, you know, the ones that you should stick with if you want to jump on. Definitely, I would recommend Action, Flash, Wonder Woman, and maybe not Green Lantern. But if you've been reading Green Lantern.
Obviously, there's a lot of side stories, and it's like hard to know like which ones are good. But
and the Absolute title,
all the Absolute titles. So for this first week, we are going to be reading Absolute Superman. I think Carl might have already read it.
Oh my God, it's
We can't talk about it yet. But I'm going to read it probably tonight. But so far, the Absolute books have been great. And I mean, it's just been a lot of really good. There's been some really fun stories that I'm excited to see more of going forward. And I'm excited to see how these two universes, eventually, I'm sure they'll start to interact. And that'll be really fun to see, too. So that is that. As always, I will put down in the description where you can find my subscriber community on Bindery, where you can find my free Fable book club, my free anime book club on Fable as well. My Discord, I'll put all of that down below. Make sure to let us know your thoughts on this video, on these comics. Are you reading them? Are you not reading them? Are you interested in more? What are your thoughts if you have read them? All of those fun things. And as always, happy reading.